my supervisor is Türkan Uraz. I also thanks for coming here. Today I will give you a presentation about my thesis topic, home space practices, personalities in particular. My presentation consists of four main topics. In the introduction, I will share field of research and interest with you. In the second part, I will elaborate on the issue, and I will talk about methodology in part 3, and I finish my presentation in fourth part. Early queer theorists took their cues and key concepts from several sources, including the gay identity politics that grew out of the activism of the AIDS epidemic, feminist theory, and cultural studies. Here's a rundown of some of the texts and thinkers central to its development. You can see the process step by step. Sexuality is a social construct. During the 19th centuries, in works like The History of Sexuality, philosopher and historian Foucault questioned how society treated sexuality as an essential truth rather than a social construction. In his theorizing, Foucault positioned that identity is not innate and that politics generally rely on hierarchy of desire as a means of oppression. Second, sexual behavior hierarchy. And Gary Rubin's essay, Thinking Sex, examined how society places certain sexual behaviors above others. According to Rubin, this normative framework then served as the basis of marginalization and oppression. The other step, the gendering of sexuality. Eve Kofoski's seminal book Epistemology of the Closet explored how society genders sexuality. For example, by defining your sexual identity primarily by the gender identities of the people who attract you. And the other step, sex and gender as performance. In 1990, Judith Butler published Gender Trouble, which suggests sex and gender are performative elements of identity rather than innate characteristic. And last one, the birth of queer theory. Teresa de Lauretis became the first writer to coin the phrase queer theory. The Lauretis outlined a complete rethinking of sexuality divorced from the binaries and standards defined by heterosexual power structures, and Warner would later refer to as heteronormativity. And with modernism, the main decisions that emerged with the reflection of modernism and architecture were to get to know the user. There were several aspects to getting to know the user. The user was defined according to anthropometric, sociocultural, income, education, and family structure. There were user descriptions starting from the anthropometric features of the body, costing the group and going all the way to the family. With the change of family, the emerging gender roles in sociocultural characteristics become more sharper. Until now, the roles they have taken in male-female space, society, family structure, and family education have been dealt with. The residential space has been defined through these roles, and we know that there are no two such sharp roles, male, female, and there is the third role, And the content of this third role is very diverse. And we can say that everyone in this group agrees, but the queer perspective as a higher view of is a certain worldwide. There is a way of looking at the world, events, analyzing and naming them. We wonder how it affects the place as a character. However, according to them, we can say something to the place. And this is a term that can be used to describe individuals who identify themselves outside the main sexual norms. The user has always been important in architecture. In the process of scientification of design with modernization, the importance of architecture with every feature of the user has been emphasized. Level is based on the physical, social, and cultural characteristics of the user. And in an increasingly globalized world, where family structures are changing and where individuals are more alike, different groups and identities have begun to emerge. Basic gender roles, the female is the variable one. She is the one who can be a man or a child where she should be. And she is the one who can transform both her body and her performance. The woman represents the emptiness of space. The bearer, tangible, corporeal features of architecture are reflected by male, while the boys are reflected by female. According to them, which gender is queer closer to? The answer to this question will also be discussed in this research. And there are features or support services that support the flexibility of space. Without this, the space cannot be transformed. The queer perspective feeds the flexibility of space. Counter spaces, closet rooms are examples of these. And how does queer identity perceive privacy in space, clean and dirty, sharing space, function in space? And also the answer to this question will be also discussed. And this gender group is my area of interest. That's why I focused on this area in my study, because I enjoyed working in this field. The use of rainbow flags is a very old tradition. In many cultures around the world, it is shown as a symbol of diversity, contentment, hope, and desire. Each color represents a different component of a society. Red represents life, orange represents healing and growth, yellow represents the sun, green represents the nature, blue represents harmony, and purple represents spirituality. In this study, we will try to understand the queer perspective, which is actually the perspective of this diversity on a world. Queer is an umbrella term as a gender group. It is also the perspective of the world. There are those who are under this umbrella don't look at the world in this way. The queer perspective isn't judged about gender. The point of view shouldn't necessarily be perceived as looking through gender roles dominated by them. And in other words, we can think more flexibility, bilaterally, empathic, and non-discriminatory and inclusive. We don't we don't know if the queer perspective is dominated by everyone in the queer group. Without knowing this, it is not possible to accept a person as queer just because he or she is not a hetero and measure how she or he looks at the space. And two things can be targeted. First, studies have been carried out in the city and on the scale of public space, and their identities have been talked about in the relation to the space. There are preferences, additions, and interventions that the user makes to the space during the use of the space. This adds a process of adapting to the space from a queer perspective and sense of belonging. One might think that this would be different from other gender roles, and I am talking about probability. There is no definitive judgment. And the second part, how can the role of queer user be related to the architectural character of the space? Flexible spaces, transformative spaces, service spaces, how do they serve? And we will talk about elements such as closed space that define voice as flexible, that have the flexible use and transformation of space. And briefly, firstly, redefining space through queer perspective. And secondly, after redefining it, I will try to understand how the queer user evaluates that space. In this process, I will direct subject questions about daily life, private life, public life, and living together. And in addition, the multiple roles of the locations help with the transformation, and multiple functions are based on multiple roles. Especially in small houses, we can observe the transformation increases as the square meter decreases. There is a need for service spaces that fit the ability to transform. And despite the decrease in square meters in small dwellings, the service space retains its place. And methodology. First, we look at space from a queer perspective. In the other stage, we make the queer perspective look at the space. So we are trying to understand the queer perspective in the space. Although we don't know whether people who belong to this other identity have a queer perspective as a view of the world, and we will select some people from these parts and consider their evaluation of the same place. And conclusion, discussion on evaluation of space from a queer point of view, and discussion on the use of space, experience and evaluation of the space by the queer gender role. For this purpose, there will be a discussion according to findings, observation and examination.